Hello, everybody. How are you today? I apologize for being so late. Um, it's been a crazy day, and honestly, it's been a crazy day in a really good way. Um, so just quick backstory as to why it's crazy. My ex and I have been split up for going on 7 years. In custody since then. Um, and we finally had some really good news within my custody case. And I'm truly so super excited about it um, because um, this might mean that we have some accountability finally in our case. So I'm really excited what this means. Um, so yeah, but there was just a lot of really good news about that. Um, and it is very exciting for me. Um, I also saw, and this has absolutely nothing to do with um, really anything outside of to try and break up some of the monotony. Um, I want to um I want to play around a little bit um and start making daily pup reports for Loki, who is my service dog in training. Um he's the cutest little stinker ever. Well, he's not little. He's about a 60-pound stinker. Um but he is such a cute stinker. Um, and Loki can be very mouthy. He is an adorable Old English sheepdog mix. He's getting trained to be my mobility dog. Um, so I'm really excited, but he's also very mouthy. And I was watching, if you guys go onto my Facebook, um, Crafty True Crime, um, on Facebook to the page, I posted there as well um, the video that actually inspired this. So somebody was reading to their dog their report card from doggy daycare, and it made me really think that it could be funny and very lighthearted to do a similar thing with Loki, except for he doesn't go to doggy daycare because he's being trained as my service dog. So, and I'm doing the training myself. He would be the second service dog that I have trained myself. Um, and so we're actually getting ready to start his certification classes so that he can officially become a certified service dog. Um, And I really feel like it would be really funny. There are a lot of times where I will tell him no, that he can't do something, or I'll ask him to get a toy, or I will have him do a particular training task or something, and he'll just get really mouthy. So I feel like if I started doing something similar to like a little doggy report card every day based on his training and how well he did in his training that day and his behaviors. Um, I think that it could be kind of funny to see how he reacts. And it came to me because of the video that, like I said, is on my Facebook page. If you go to Crafty True Crime on Facebook, It's a really cute short video, but I think it would be something fun and lighthearted to do. If you guys feel the same way, please let me know. I'll gladly start doing it. I might just do it for the fun of it for my own personal account too. You never know. I also recently created a what's it called? I'm trying to think of what it's called. I apologize. Um, what is it called? Oh, I started a Patreon. That's what it's called. Sorry, my mind drew a complete and total blank. Um, but started a um I started a Patreon. Sorry. Again, I don't understand where that's coming from, where my like mind is drawing a blank, but it is. Um, so I started the Patreon and I will be adding some like members only live streams and things like that there. Um, I will also be um I will also be doing like contests and things like that. I'm not entirely sure everything that I want to um encompass, but I feel that it could be a lot of fun, to be honest. And so I just felt like it would be something kind of fun to do, something kind of, and could possibly be good for Loki and give him some decent feedback. I apologize if you hear my children um, in the background. They are just um, or well, they will be as soon as they walk in. Um, I am currently trying to get my stream to do what I want it to do. What did I choose for this one? Because that would be screen capture. Okay, perfect. Well, since this one is going to work, we'll versus that one. Yes. All right. Okay. Ooh, I thought I messed up my stream for a second. Sorry, guys. I was having a heart attack over nothing. All right, let's see if my screen capture works. Maybe. There we go. Okay, so there's that screen capture. Let me make sure that the other tabs work as well. Before we really get started and dive into what I'm looking at, let me choose. One is about an older case. The case of Kimberly Long and Oswaldo Conde, where Oswaldo, give me one second. Of course, that one would be a pain. We're going to reload that page. We will start off with the case of an Alabama woman. Bear with me for just a second. Okay, I apologize. Streamlabs kicked me out for some weird reason. I'm not sure why. Um, but give me one moment while I am loading all of the links, because since I've restarted my computer, they're just may have to restart the two news articles. What I might do is restart the two news articles and then um, just play the YouTube video that I have if I can get that to work. Okay, there we go. We're going to do the YouTube video first. The two articles that I had. So without further ado, sorry, Loki pushed a button. We are finally going to get started on some of the cases that I'm covering now.
A Florida sheriff's deputy, a mother of two, is found dead, and a key piece of evidence points the finger at her husband, a former sheriff's deputy himself. I'm going to talk with Police Sergeant Kyle Schoberg about the bizarre and tragic details of this new case. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. All right, let's head over to Orange County, Florida, where investigators responded to a 911 call from former Sheriff's Deputy Anthony Shea, claiming that he had discovered his wife, Lieutenant Ellie Shea, dead in a pool of blood in the couple's bedroom. Now, the investigation eventually led police to arrest, of all people, Shea himself. Yes, he was later charged with murdering his own wife. Shea had been working as a sheriff's deputy for nearly 18 years, and even alongside his wife for some of those years. So the question is, how did we get here? Well, before we get to this incident, we have to first talk a little bit about a major incident or a major key event that occurred in the months leading up to this murder. You see, in August, Anthony Shea's nearly 18-year career at the Orange County Sheriff's Office ended with his resignation. This after an internal investigation.
Agora Cyber Charter School is ready to put over 18 years of being a leader in online education to work for you. Dive into curriculum, design.
The office released a statement reading, quote, that he resigned earlier this year while under investigation for allegations that would have resulted in his termination. So what is this all about? What were these allegations? Well, it turns out that Shea had allegedly cheated on his wife Ellie, and as a matter of fact, he not only had an affair, but it allegedly occurred while he was on duty. So, with all of this in mind, these two having worked together, then the affair leading to Shea's resignation, how do we get to Shea being charged with his wife's murder? Well, let's start with the version of events that Anthony Shea told police. And this is all coming straight from the affidavit for his arrest warrant that we actually obtained. So just keep that in mind. Now, it says the night before Ellie Shea was killed, Anthony told detectives that she was becoming increasingly depressed over the internal investigation that he was facing, telling police, "We had a bad night last night, arguing about my affair." He went on to say that the following day, Ellie called in sick from work, and he took the children to a Publix grocery store, he said, to give her space. Text messages sent from Ellie's phone actually corroborate this, because in the affidavit, there is a text message exchange dated October 14th where a message is sent from Ellie's phone to her boss, and it reads, "Good morning, Cap. I think I have food poisoning because I'm unable to hold anything down. If you're okay with it, I'm going to sit today out." About 20 minutes later, her boss replies with, "Absolutely, I hope you feel better." This is a really, really sad case, but it's also an important one. It's an important one to cover. And look, we're able to do this. We're able to break down and analyze these stories for you because we have amazing support from our sponsors. And I want to just call out one of our great partners right now real quick, Upside. So Upside is a free app that helps you get cash back when you buy gas, groceries, food. This is real cash back. It's money that appears in your Upside app that can then transfer straight into your bank account. I'll give you an example. Look here. I used Upside to find a gas station. I claimed an offer, pay with my credit card at the pump, follow the steps on the app, and I got cash back. It is so simple to use, and you can use Upside at all different kinds of places, restaurants, convenience stores. So to find out how much you could earn, click the link in the description to download Upside or scan the QR code on screen and use our promo code SIDEBAR, and you'll get an extra 25 cents back on every gallon on your first tank of gas. Hope you can check it out. Now, regarding Anthony's trip to Publix, there was another text message that was sent later that day from her phone where it appeared to back up what he told police, because it says, "I can't do this anymore. Please understand, it's too much what you did to me. I can't anymore. Take the girls for a drive. Give me space, please." Okay. Well, when Anthony returned home, he says that he discovered his wife on their bed with a gun on her chest, a wound to her temple, told police that he called 911 upon discovering her, performed CPR until paramedics arrived. Shay suggested that this gruesome scene was a result of a self-inflicted wound, but investigators started to look into this, and they uncovered details that didn't quite match up with what Shay was telling them. You see, the first thing that raised their suspicions had to do with Shay's cooperation with the investigation, because he initially gave permission for a full search only to seemingly change his mind hours later. This was confirmed in the affidavit. Then a review of body-worn camera footage was conducted, and the officer made a very interesting observation of Shay's conduct, saying Anthony Shay attempts to control the crime scene and direct deputies to evidence which will confirm his alibi. So after reviewing cell phone records and the body cam, homicide detectives began to suspect that Shay might have actually killed his wife Ellie and that he was attempting to cover this up. But what specifically led them to this conclusion? Well, this is where a crucial piece of evidence comes in. Somehow, according to the affidavit, the audio recorder was switched on accidentally, and it stayed recording for almost an entire hour. So what did it capture? This is what officers took note of in the affidavit. A gunshot is not heard on the captured audio. There is no evidence to suggest that Ellie Shay was alive during the recording. The audio recorded message captures Anthony Shay returning to the bedroom and remaining in the room for approximately 50 seconds prior to notifying 911. Anthony Shay does not immediately provide medical aid. The 911 call is captured on the audio recorded message. Anthony Shay does not become emotional or react of Ellie Shay until the 911 call is answered by the 911 dispatcher. So it's interesting to note that the recording didn't pick up that he expressed any kind of emotion at what he alleged was a horrific scene, finding his wife dead in a pool of blood. Sure, everybody reacts differently, but you could see how that could be problematic for him. And so investigators, they believe that Ellie was alive and sent the text message to her boss indicating she was sick, but they believe that that was one of the last messages that she sent before Anthony Shay went upstairs to the couple's bedroom and shot her in the head. That's the allegation now. So Anthony Shay, he was arrested just days later. He was charged with first-degree murder. And there's actually even more to this, because as more court documents were obtained by local affiliate WFTV, they suggest that the marriage between Ellie and Anthony, it had turned tumultuous long before she even discovered this affair. Documents they obtained show that Ellie, who went by the name Nancy in the filings, begged a judge to get her away from her husband, even filing documents alleging that there was violence in the couple's home. And now, you fast forward to the present day where Anthony's sitting behind bars accused of his wife's murder. What a story. So to help me break this down and the details of what is truly a disturbing and heartbreaking case, I want to bring in California Police Sergeant Kyle Schoberg. Kyle, thanks so much for coming on. It's good to see you. I don't even know where to begin in all this. First, talk to me about the internal investigation reportedly about an affair. What do you take away from that? Does that happen a lot? An affair on duty, nonetheless?
Well, I don't want to say it happens a lot, but it most certainly happens. And if you have an officer that's having an affair while on duty during the course of his employment, then yeah, I mean, they're going to place him on an administrative leave. They're going to look into it, do a bunch of interviews, and it's obviously misappropriation of money by the city that he's being paid. He's having an affair on duty. It's all bad. And generally speaking, if they can prove that that's what he was doing, then usually it leads to termination. And in this case, it seems like he quit in lieu of being fired.
And so now we have that component of the story, and then we move into this killing. What do you make of his initial story that he told police? And remember, he is innocent until proven guilty, but that initial story, as I was laying it out, certain parts seem to be backed up by the text messages. Others, maybe not so much.
Yeah, well, I think in this case, he's a police officer, and he was a cop for, over 18 years? I mean, he knows the game. I mean, he's been to homicide scenes. He knows how these things are going to get investigated. So he's trying to use the cell phone, which is a crucial piece of evidence that we all use in law enforcement, especially in today's day and age. I mean, your phone contains everything. So I think he was trying to use that angle. I think where he really messed up was it says that the audio recording was inadvertently turned on, which obviously he was unaware of. And throughout that entire time when she was texting him, he's leaving the house, there's no sound of gunshot. So that alone is pretty compelling to show that how would she have shot herself if there's no sound of gunshot, yet he's communicating with her. So I think he was trying to use, obviously, the cell phone as a tactic for his alibi, and it backfired on him when he somehow turned on her audio recording, and it just proves his alibi. And then going back to him calling 911 and not having any type of emotion, I mean, I understand their relationship was bad. They're going through potentially a divorce, but I'm sorry, that's his wife. They have children together, and a lot of times investigators do go back and listen to those 911 recordings because they can't. That is pretty telling when someone's calling 911 and he's showing no type of emotion in his voice that he just found his wife potentially deceased and shot in the head. And then he's not willing or wanting to provide CPR on her. I mean, look, as cops, we respond to calls all people and we perform CPR. That's your loved one. You're going to do those things no matter how gruesome you think it is, or that's just hard to believe that he wouldn't do that. And then he's trying to control the scene. At one point in the affidavit, it says that he's literally holding their iPad and he's telling the deputy, "Look, here's a timestamp when she was texting me." He's wanting to divert their attention towards his own alibi, that is just odd in those type of circumstances. I've been to a lot of suicide scenes, and they're heartbreaking, and you feel for the family. And I can't say I've never had anybody actually do that. So those are all things that just compile against him.
I guess the counter argument with that be he is a member of law enforcement. It is his home. Shouldn't he not direct law enforcement, the investigators? Hey, look at this. It wouldn't be outside the realm of possibility for him to direct the scene because it's so unique to his environment. Or would this be a situation you need to step back and let us do the investigation? I'm just trying to anticipate ways that he might be able to argue this at a trial.
You could argue that, but I think when you put yourself in a human perspective, just finding your wife dead, you have your kids are there. I don't think the first reaction of somebody who found their wife deceased would be to pull up an iPad and start proving your case that you weren't the one that did it. You would think that you would let the detectives, do their investigation, and then when that time comes to give your statement, all those things are going to be laid out there. But for him to actually, while they're on scene, to be really pushing it to show that, hey, look, no, I was texting her or she was texting me while I was gone with the kids. It's extremely unusual behavior.
And I would say, again, playing devil's advocate here for the defense, people respond to tragedy in all different ways. People would respond to different ways. Is it always the case that, you don't show emotion, you're complicit in what happened?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you're right. Everybody does show emotions different. I mean, as a police officer, he was a cop for 18 years. He's been to several of these types of calls. But again, I think you circle back to it is his wife, it's his loved ones, the mother of his kids. That's a completely different dynamic. And so, could he argue that that's just the way he handles trauma? Sure. But again, if you go back and look at all the digital evidence that they have with the text messages, that's pretty hard to prove his statement and alibi.
I mean, I think and look, I'll say even the video, the recording is pretty bad in and of itself. I do want to ask you the idea of if he's this meticulous, and we'll talk about Justine in a minute, but if he's this meticulous and killed his wife, is it strange? No. I mean, he would have to know that seems suspicious, right?
Well, I think it would look more suspicious on his part if they're like, hey, they're wanting his full cooperation. If he had nothing to do with this, why wouldn't you hand over your cell phone and give consent and your phone? That could have been the angle that he was going, and then making deeper into this. And then that's when he decides, okay, if they're going to start looking at me like I'm a potential suspect, I think anybody should invoke their rights and, hey, not give consent to start searching your house, your phone. That's to protect yourself. So that's probably the route that he went down. And honestly, as an investigator, if you're there at a suicide scene and you're starting to think this might not be a suicide, you're probably going to want to go with the search warrant route anyways, and not just go off of consent.
When you're investigating like this, what are some of the telltale signs you look for to point to the idea that the scene was possibly staged? Are there things that jump out to you immediately? What do you think they might have been looking for? Walk us through that.
Yeah, so when you go to these suicide calls, I mean, they're very interesting, and you don't ever want to go to a suicide and just assume that it was a suicide, right? I think some of the things that you look for are, okay, this is a husband and wife in a relationship. They're going through a divorce. They had an argument the night before. He was having an affair with somebody else. He quit his job in lieu of termination. She's filing court documents against him, trying to obtain restraining orders. You start looking at all of that, and as an investigator, even as a patrol cop, you see for something like that, things just aren't adding up, and you're going to want to give that the fullest amount of attention and investigate everything until you reach a dead end to prove that it's not, or that it is suicide.
And how difficult is it to stage a scene like that?
Well, I've never staged a suicide scene, so I don't know.
That's good to know. I mean, but most people, is it sloppy? Is it? Do you look back and you say, it's not the easiest thing to stage, or is it? I don't know.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I mean, I think people, especially a prior police officer who's been to probably dozens of these, thought he could, especially someone that has shot themselves. I mean, guns land in different ways. They fall out of your hand differently. You're going to have gunshot residue on the person's hand, the victim's hand. Would he have gunshot residue on him? It would depend if he's washed his hands. And then the affidavit said while the cops were on scene, he washed his hands. So that would all be problematic. But I mean, you could probably do your best to stage a suicide scene. And I'm not saying it hasn't worked, but the reality is when all that evidence starts compiling up and they start looking more and more into it, you're going to have experts that come in and can disprove a lot of things. And an interesting note for women who actually commit suicide, generally speaking, and there's data out there to prove this, but they actually shoot themselves in the chest often and not in the head. So,
oh wow,
that also could be a red flag for an investigator on scene. To just one more thing to look at.
Any idea why that is?
I think the belief is that women take pride in themselves. I've been to a lot of suicides with women where they actually. I've seen women put their wedding dress on. I've seen them dress very nicely, put makeup on. And I think the theory is they don't want to disfigure their face at all. And so they'll shoot themselves in the heart or in the chest.
Wow. One thing we didn't touch upon, little weird motive, because it's not like Shay was trying to cover up an affair. His wife already knew about it. He was already resigned because of the discovery of the affair. And this seemingly was a source of contention between them. It seemed like she was troubled by it, but it wasn't like he was trying to hide it in any way or prevent it from ending his marriage or prevent it from his job being lost. It just feels strange. If he did this, what would be the motive? And as I've said this before 1,000 times, prosecutors, they don't have to prove motive. It's impossible sometimes to know why somebody did it. You can't prove that. But why do you think he did this, if he did this?
Yeah, like you said, it's not so much the motive. I don't know. I think if you think about it, I've been to a lot of homicides, and especially we have couples like this, you're going through a divorce. Sometimes it just boils down to not wanting to give up custody of their kids, wanting to have their children full time. Who knows? It could be anything. But yeah, you're right. It is odd that it wasn't like he's trying to cover this up. He's probably not trying to be with this other woman. It seemed like maybe he was trying to make their marriage work. I don't know, but I think a lot of times this stuff gets really ugly, and divorces get ugly, and it boils down to a lot of times just custody of kids.
And look, to put a human element on this, the Orange County Sheriff John Mina issued a statement surrounding the death of, again, his former colleague. And it reads in part, "We have all struggled this week with feelings of shock, grief, and guilt while we tried to make sense of Ellie's death, which was meant to appear as a suicide. We pray for her two girls, the rest of her family, and all of those who love her." Now, Kyle, as we finish this up, obviously the death of a member of law enforcement is always a sad day. It's a tragedy. But the idea that it was allegedly perpetrated by another member or former member of law enforcement, does that get you angry? We've talked before about cases where law enforcement have been found guilty of wrongdoing or accused of wrongdoing. Does that get you angry when you see something like this?
Yeah, I think anytime you see stuff like this in the law enforcement community, it's a scar not only on the entire community of law enforcement, but I mean, that's a huge scar on that agency. I mean, they have to deal with one of their own killing another one of their own superior officers. She's a lieutenant at the agency. I mean, she's at an executive staff level. So that's tough. I mean, think of all the people that know them there, who are friends with this guy, who are friends with her. It's devastating. But honestly, I truly think that the biggest victims in this whole thing are going to be those kids that they have. I mean, they lost their mom, and now if their dad's found guilty, they're gonna lose their father too. And so they just lost both their parents over this entire thing.
Really, really sad case, really, really disturbing case, and hearing how it unfolded is just incredible. Sergeant Kyle Schoberg, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it, sir.
Absolutely, Jesse. It's always a pleasure. Thank you.
All right, everybody, that's all we have for you right
All right. So, how do you guys feel about the Shay case? Like, do you feel like the case was just about the affair and the fact that they were getting divorced? And do you think that potentially there was more to it than what they have found so far? Like, maybe the mistress was pregnant. And if they said something about the mistress potentially being pregnant, then I apologize because I must have missed it. But yeah. Oh man. Okay. Sorry. My stream was showing that it wasn't live for some reason. So I was really worried about that for a second, and it distracted me. So I apologize, even though I know now that my stream is live. I do have to agree with them that, these poor children, they lost truly so much in this. They lost their mom, and they're gonna have to live with the details of knowing that she brutally murdered, because eventually these children are going to end up finding the YouTube videos and the news articles and the Facebook posts and all of that. Eventually, they will be faced with having to learn all of these details. Even if those children are not sitting in the courtroom, it'll eventually find its way to these poor children. And hold on one moment, I'm gonna cough. Sorry. I have spent the last couple of days sick. And that also explains why I kept getting the like dry spot in my throat earlier this week. But these children are going to grow up without having one of the first people that they probably ran to get hugs before bed. And um, they are not going to be able to, you know, snuggle and get those mom cuddles. And there's not going to be mom there to kiss their boo-boos and make it all better when they scrape their knee. And it's sad. You know, no child should ever have to be without their parent, and no parent should ever have to be without their child. Um, and not only that, but they then have to be faced with the idea that their father potentially, well, there's overwhelming evidence, but that their father, who is currently presumed innocent until proven guilty, killed their mother. Um, and hold on one moment, everyone. Sorry, my youngest had to show me his master pack, which I just absolutely adore. Um, so yes, you know, it's bad enough to have to sit here and come to terms with the fact that your mother passed away. It's a whole other layer to have it be that you have to face the fact that your parent passed away traumatically, um, such as like a murder or, you know, whatever. Um, and then it just adds another layer that's even harder on these kids. What's wrong, sir? Oh, okay. Thank you, Pumpkin. I appreciate that. Oh, I apologize, guys. I thought I hit the button to mute that for a second. Um, but yeah, then it is a whole nother layer to have to sit here and go through and process the fact that um, you are having to deal with this and know that your father is accused of killing your mother. Um, and so my heart just breaks for these children because they don't even have that safe parent that they can fall back on that most other children have in a situation like this. You know, um, like if something were to happen to me, my children would be able to fall back on my husband, and potentially my ex. And these kids, I mean, they're gonna have other relatives, I'm sure, but they're not going to have mom or dad. And that's a big difference. Um, and I just, I feel so bad for those children. Um, I just, I couldn't ever imagine having to sit here and deal with that. But yes, so we're gonna move on to the other one that I had. Um, and then while I am kind of sort of going a little bit the while I'm going over a little bit the day 2 for the end of today, I will go back to the older case that I had about Kimberly Long and Oswaldo Conti. So as of right now, this is a case that really kind of hits home for me, because of the fact that several years ago, I also got out of a relationship like this. Um, and so, um, you all right, Liz? Yeah, okay. Um, but this case really hits home for me because a domestic violence relationship about 7 years ago now. Um, and we had several circumstances that were very reminiscent of this. And so this is probably going to be a case that I will eventually follow. Um, but I do handle, just as a forewarning, I do handle domestic violence related deaths and child abuse related deaths a little bit differently than I will be handling something like the Melody Ferris case, um, where it's not as heavy on potential domestic violence aspects and things like that. Um, so as this reads, this is from October 24th, so yesterday at 6:01 a.m. Ex-husband of Alabama woman killed after protection order denied, arrested on unrelated charges. A Priceville man involved but not criminally charged in the Sunday shooting death of his ex-wife was arrested by Lawrence County deputies on Tuesday. Zachary Allen Merriman, 33, was taken into custody at Langley Private Drive, where his ex-wife, Kimberly Shawn Ricks, was found dead from multiple gunshot wounds 2 days earlier by Priceville police at 6:15 p.m. and transferred to the Lawrence County Sheriff's Office, according to the Priceville Police Department. Police said Merriman was arrested on 6 active warrants: second-degree assault, second-degree burglary, first-degree criminal mischief, first-degree theft, menacing, and third-degree trespassing. The charges stem from an attempted September 18th theft of a motorcycle from a residence in Lawrence County and an ensuing altercation, a sheriff's spokesperson said Wednesday. Merriman and Ricks had 3 young children and divorced in 2019. Now, this is where it really concerns me because they've been divorced for a while. This is the same year that I left my ex. And so, it's really sad to see that a lot of the same aspects, um, are present in this case. And maybe eventually I will go through my own domestic violence story. But for right now, just know that my own story very much resembles this. I have 2 children with my ex. There was still claims of stalking and things like that, and I have proof of everything. And there's been stuff where my ex isn't following our custody order and things like that. And I'm currently dealing with custody court issues and asking for a contempt of custody and modifications and stuff like that to be made. So, and also keep in mind that I also recently got married. And so there's just a lot of really scary parallels with this story to my own. Prior to Rick's death, she attempted to modify the custody agreement. In May, Ricks petitioned Cullum County for a protection from abuse order against Merriman, claiming he had been stalking her. The petition was denied by Circuit Judge Gregory Nichols. Merriman had been charged twice with violating a protection order from barring him from contacting his current estranged wife. Monday afternoon, the Coleman County District's office moved to revoke Merriman's bond for a first-degree theft charge that he faced there. Court records show Nichols issued an arrest warrant for Merriman minutes later. And that's really all that one says. But I will just know that I will be following this case a little bit more closely. What I do want to do is I'm going to run just a quick little search while you guys are on here, see what else I can find. I haven't dived too deep into this case, but let's see what we can find. Let's see what the Decatur Daily has to say. And honestly, thank you to all of the journalists who have provided the context in which we are seeing these. Is it gonna really hit me with a paywall? I'm gonna have to pick a different. It is gonna hit me with a paywall. Let's try. All right. Let's see if I can rerun that search real quick. Maybe. I am so sorry about that, everybody. It's not been my day technology wise. I was trying to go back to the it's not been my day. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that it went back to the live stream that I was currently working on. I was trying to log in for the free account for Decatur. So give me just a minute to sign up real quick. They don't make this easy. But then the nice thing is this has me you know, this gives me access anyway to any future articles that I need from Decatur Daily. So I apologize that it's taking me a minute. Let's see if it actually gives me, it does not give me the article. I got one more idea for it to give me the article. I can't guarantee that it's going to. I may have to pick a different article. I'm hoping that I don't, because this seems like it would be a good read. As long as I don't have to. Okay. Seems like it's going to stay now. So we are going to unhide my screen. There we go. All right. So this one was updated 6 hours ago. It says police secure murder warrant for Priceville man involved in ex-wife's death. Priceville police on Thursday secured an arrest warrant for murder for Zachary Allen Merriman. The police say was involved in the Sunday shooting death of ex-wife Kimberly Shawn Ricks. Months after Ricks was denied a protection order against him. Merriman, 33, in the Lawrence County Jail, remained in the Lawrence County Jail on Friday. He was arrested by deputies on Tuesday and charged with assault, burglary, and theft and other charges related to an alleged attempted motorcycle theft on September 18th, according to a Lawrence County Sheriff's Office spokesperson. Priceville police said the murder warrant will be served to Merriman as soon as he is eligible to be transferred to the Morgan County Jail. So they do now have an arrest warrant for him for murder. And so I am kind of excited about that. I also like that they have Anaya's law, which means that he won't get bond. So that's pretty cool. Where he will remain without bond pending an Anaya's law hearing. Merriman and Ricks had 3 young children and divorced in 2019, according to court records, which we already read in the previous one. Prior to Rick's death, she attempted to modify the custody agreement. In May, Ricks petitioned Coleman County for a protection from abuse order against Merriman, claiming that he had been stalking her. The petition was denied by Circuit Court Judge Gregory Nichols. Merriman had been charged twice with violating a protection order barring him from contacting his current estranged wife. Monday afternoon, the Coleman County District Attorney's Office moved to revoke Merriman's bond for a first-degree theft charge he faces there, and Nichols issued an arrest warrant for Merriman. So I'm really glad that they were able to get a murder warrant for those charges. I know in the previous article it had stated that there had not been an arrest warrant issued yet at that time. So yes. I apologize. I'm sorry. My YouTube is just not wanting to stay live for some reason. It is extremely behind, and I apologize, everybody. Hopefully it will behave itself for us to finish out day 2 of the Melody Walker Ferris case. We only have about an hour and a half left. And then I'm hoping, I'm going to cross my fingers, that tomorrow will be much better, tech-wise. And I'm just going to cross my fingers. And hopefully we can then start day 3 with a fresh slate. So what I'm going to do is, since we've already been on for a little over an hour total, I'm then going to just finish out day 2. Whenever day 2 is done, we're then going to stop the stream and then move on to day 3 tomorrow. I haven't scheduled when I'm going to do day 3 part 1 yet. I'm going to figure that out after I'm done streaming this one. And again, everybody, I apologize for the tech problems that I've been having today. It is very much unlike me, but we're going to make the most of it. So back to Melody Ferris Walker. I hope you all enjoyed a little bit of a break from it. And while we're doing that, I'm also going to reopen the other news article to read afterwards, because I really feel like acknowledging the wrongfully convicted is just as important as highlighting the new cases and the like the cold cases and the missing persons. I feel that exonerations are equally as important, because it holds our judicial system to a certain standard, because it lets them know, hey, your mistakes do not go unnoticed, and we expect you to do better next time. And it shows them where some of the weaknesses are in their particular system, and it could be what's the word I'm looking for? An example for other departments as to, problems that they may face and things that they can do to alleviate that from being a future problem in their own department. So without further ado, I'm going to shut my big mouth and I'm going to get to Georgia versus Melody Walker Ferris, day 2, part 3 or 4. I don't know. I've lost track. Part whatever.
And so we're marking flags, and you start to see wooden stakes go down for our datum lines. And then we have master's candidates and the deputy coroners in helping to rake and clear while we're taking pictures.
And as you look at the exhibit, Shaw 18, the photograph, I've got the cursor here. It appears that on the right side, there's an angle or it slopes down or goes downhill to the left. Is that right?
Yes.
I apologize. We are having more lovely technical difficulties. Apparently, I was not meant to stream today. My goodness. I may end up having to cut the stream off and us try day 2 again tomorrow, because all I've got is a black screen. There we go.
20 is kind of showing the angle that downhill. Is that correct?
Correct.
Now, on the outside of the fire pit, there appears to be is that wood and things that are charred but not burned.
Yes.
Maybe some vegetation.
Correct.
We start to get markers. Now the A, I know that's going to be renumbered at some point, but what are we doing here in 24? What's this showing?
We are starting to build our quadrants. So we're laying down our north-south line and our east-west. We're also, we have angle indicators on those lines so that if we need to run a tape measure across at one point, we can see what that angle is at that measurement point. So we run the lines and then run the tape. We have our 4 quadrants, but the lines aren't completely square, and we keep it within our boundaries of where we see evidentiary goodies.
And we're going to get into this, but I believe quadrant, it goes top on the right side, A, B, C, D, kind of going in this direction, clockwise.
Yes, I believe we went clockwise that night.
And you see B in Shaw 30 photograph. And then there are some flags that are put down. Are those to indicate things that you just see on the top?
Items of evidence on the top.
Here shows the Shaw 32 shows the 4 quadrants.
Correct.
So if this is A, B, C, D, and most of the evidence, the remains were found in A and B. Is that
in A and B?
when you were there, did you look for any accelerants?
I did not.
Did you find any, happen to see gasoline cans or gasoline containers, anything like that?
I did not find any in the area of the pile.
Was there various items, different things, wood, fencing, bottles, cans, trash, all kinds of different items in this fire pit?
Oh, there was, yes, sir.
Now we've got to Shaw 49. With Shaw 51, we're going to go into. Tell us again, how would you attack each to remove things and collect things? What would you actually do? Did you use a shovel, hands? What did you go down? How did you pick stuff up and how did you sift through it?
So we start with our hands first. It's our most tactile sense. So we're going to start in our quadrant. Someone's writing down. We'll start with the large items that we can see and identify. And then from there, we will start to grab shovels and trowels to pick up areas of ash and debris to go over to the sifter. And those will be transferred from a specific quadrant being documented by the scribe there, and then put in a bucket. From there, taken to the sifter. The sifter is placed over the blue tarps, something that will contrast with us, and then it's one bucket at a time. We'll sift it, look through the sifter, empty the tarp back into the bucket, check the sifter, make sure we don't have anything, catalog, document that, and then we just keep rinse and repeating as we go through these buckets. So everything starts to slow down at that point once we've removed the big items that we can readily see and identify.
When you found an item of interest, what would you do with it? Is there
So
Dr. Gooding who laid it out, or what would she do?
There's laid out on tarps. However, Dr. Gooding wants to do that. Like I said at the beginning, she's kind of running that. I'm just making sure, one, I'm learning, and two, anything that she needs. But she's running that process. But she's laying stuff out on tarps. She's cataloging the skeletal remains as they're removed, checking on us. I get to do the manual labor. I was sifting some stuff. We're also continuing to rake and make sure that we don't miss anything within that specific quadrant. Once we're done with that quadrant, we move on.
In Shaw 55, we have these, you see the ground has markings like, was that how that was, or is that something y'all did?
That's from us raking.
Did you notice around the burn pile itself, was there any signs of raking or a tractor had been used for something to clear the land?
No, not around that, because the area on the edge of the burn pile was still green with vegetation.
But did you see that there was evidence that a tractor or RTV was in that area?
Not during this point of the investigation.
This is 57.
All right, so here's where I start having a problem with this is they can't tell you if it was the tractor that was used or the RTV or if it was, her using, as somebody in the Facebook groups, or not Facebook groups, Facebook page, on my Facebook page, had stated, is that Melody could have used a tarp. They claim that they had seen gunshot wounds that never bled. I don't entirely know about that. I don't know enough about gunshot wounds to really be able to say if they bled or not, or, if there were certain circumstances where there wouldn't be as much blood. Um, so I can't really speak to that one too much. If somebody out there in like Facebook land or YouTube land knows the answer as to, are there times where people can be shot in the chest, and potentially not have a lot of blood, that would be wonderful. Please. I would very much enjoy the additional insight on that. But they can't tell you if there was RTV tracks or if there was tractor tracks, or they can't. They can tell you what they think was suspected to have been used, but so far there's no real DNA evidence that links anybody to this crime. To be honest, I mean, there is a little bit of evidence of some of Melody Ferris's blood, but nobody has so far presented any evidence. And we just ended with day 15 today. Now, don't get me wrong, I didn't watch today's. I did watch yesterday's though. But I didn't watch today's. So as of at least yesterday's information, nobody presented a case that would have made you believe that the blood found at the scene that was Melody's came from any injuries that day. And so you don't even have a way to tie her to the case that way. Like, she had no defensive wounds from anything that was mentioned. And if I missed any of that information, please feel free to correct me. I will gladly go back and amend that information. But as of right now, nothing like that has been submitted. And now they're sitting here telling you that you can't tell if any tracks around there were made from the from the RTV or the tractor. Like, I don't know about you, but I feel that there were just too many I don't knows in this case for it to really be a substantial case to me. What do you think? I really want to hear how everybody feels on this case. I'm really interested in everybody's opinion, and I truly can't wait until we start getting some more participation in like live chats and stuff. That's something that I'm really looking forward to. I very much um bounce off of other people's opinions a lot. I am also one of those people where if you give me a different viewpoint, I will gladly um give you the information that I know, because honestly, if you know something or have interpreted something differently than me, then I would love to know, because that's the only way that we can collaborate as a group of human beings to really come to a consensus. Because think about it. Even looking at this from the outside in, we are very much, and Melissa Jade said this so wonderfully, but we are in a situation where, oh, that was not what I wanted to hit. I apologize. I am god awful today um with life and tech. Today is not my tech day. Um, but where the hell was I? I forget. I'm sorry. But I feel with like an exchange of information is the only way that we can come to a. Oh, I remember what I was saying. I'm so sorry. My mind's all over the place. It's been too much excitement today, with everything in my own life. But Melissa Jade said it very well, and so did somebody on her panel, and I can't remember. I think it was Shay Bonet. I could be wrong. I'm so sorry, Melissa and Shay, if it wasn't Shay. And I apologize to whoever it was on Melissa's stream, that I confused for Shay Bonet. But they specifically said it amazingly. So they said when they were discussing the Leilani Simon case that, um, oh, excuse me, that we are just like the jurors, that the jurors truly in that case are your peers. That the jury comprised in the Leilani assignment was a really good example of, how a jury is exactly a jury of your peers. And they very much compared the live stream even to being like another jury almost. And they were very right in that. I feel that in cases where you have a lot of people looking at it from the outside in, it is almost like having an additional set of jury people looking in and making choices. And I think that that's important for the health of any true crime case, not just the ones that are in the limelight. I feel like a lot of cold cases come because there just wasn't enough cooperation, not just from, you know, police departments not having the resources that they need, not having the technology that they need. Because, I mean, think about it. Some of these cases, especially like cold cases and unsolved cases, a lot of them were during a time when like DNA was relatively new and not quite as sensitive, and certain specimen testing and things like that. Um, and even though technology has advanced, there's always the chance for an improvement. There's always a chance that you're going to miss something at a crime scene that in 10, 15 years is going to go from something that was taboo in the science and forensic community to now being a reality. And so we're always going to have those cases where there were screw ups and things like that. And I feel that it's important for people to talk and collaborate and discuss their various different viewpoints and their various different interpretations of the evidence. Because if not, those cases where there's innocent people or, somebody's wrongfully convicted or any number of reasons why a case could be seen as unsolved or needing to be retried or getting an appellate overturn of the sentencing or need to be resentenced or anything. I feel like if we were to talk and go over these cases with more of an open mindset, that we could really do some good. Another really good example of a case would be the case of Adnan Syed and Heyman Lee. Just a brief update on that, or not update, a brief overview. There we go. Adnan Syed was accused of killing his ex-girlfriend, who he was still friends with, in high school in Baltimore back in 1999. he was convicted on extremely flimsy evidence. And eventually the Innocence Project got involved, and a family friend, Rabia Chaudhry, had also gotten involved. And then NPR came up with Serial. And Serial, for those of you who have listened to it, has been a smash hit. Even I still go back and refer to those early Adnan Syed days in Serial. It was a case that really hit home for me because I was getting close to entering high school and stuff in 1999. And it was a really big time for me. You know, and it really tainted my outlook on what it was like to be in high school and have, you know, a significant other or whatever during my high school years. Um, and thankfully, high school was not as um, traumatic as I had feared in some ways. In others, it did prove to be kind of foreshadowing, but nothing at all to do with like the Heyman Lee case. Just, you know, typical high school stuff that you don't entirely prepare for. Um, and, you know, because of the lack of evidence that wasn't circumstantial, the case came up on appeal, and Adnan Syed got out for a little while. Now the Supreme Court is trying to reinstate his conviction after it had been overturned. Um, and the state's main witness was a drug addict who admitted that he was a drug addict and who had changed their story like 7 different times. And they keep going back now and they're like, oh, this story that I told it this time happens to be the right one. And, I'm not lying anymore. And it's just, it's a flimsy case to begin with. And I have a feeling that, if Melody Ferris is found guilty, that this is going to be another one of those cases that you're really going to want to watch closely. When it comes to appeals, because I have a feeling that there's going to be a lot more that comes out. Oh, excuse me, I got the hiccups. That there's going to be a lot more that comes out during the appeals than anything. And I may have to mute for a second because Loki seems like he's going to bark at neighbors yelling at each other in the back parking lot. But we're going to go back to day 2, and we're going to continue to watch through that. But I just thought it was weird that they couldn't tell you, if it was the RTV or the tractor, but they want to present it as evidence. Like, if you can't tell us what it's from, and you don't have any real evidence that can be presented to show for sure what it was, then why are we even bringing it up in court is kind of my deal. But yes.
Seven, what's going on here? Is this just an example
We're
of what?
examining small bone fragments.
58, what is just scooping buckets? Is that how that would work?
Yep, we're troweling using a dustpan. We're troweling into the bucket. Once we're satisfied with that, it goes to the sifter. We sift it. Again, we look for small bone fragments, items of evidence, pieces of clothing, and lay those out.
Shaw 62, what is this?
That is a picture of our sifter in one of the buckets that we sifted.
And you have a sift, and then the bigger piece would remain on top like this?
Yes, sir. And then we'll go through those with the forensic anthropologist, the master's candidate. We'll pick out the bone fragments. Those will get cataloged. Pieces of construction debris will be examined. If it's not of any evidentiary value, it's returned to another area. Items of evidentiary value are set aside to be cataloged later.
To this time in your career, have you been or responded to scenes where a person's body, whether it's alive or dead, a person's body has been greatly demolished, cut up, hurt, broken, otherwise lost to injuries? How many of those have you been to?
I've been to several hundred of those.
And have you seen bones and things like that? Could you recognize certain type of bones, or was the experts able to recognize it much quicker?
They're able to recognize them much quicker, but that's part of my NFA training is a week of anthropology. And I was called many times upon my return by detectives from all over the county. Hey, we found this bone. Fido brought this bone up to the house. Can you look at it? And I had books that I would carry with me to help me identify difference between animal and human.
Have you worked shootings where people have been actually shot?
Yes, sir.
You ever seen anybody get shot and still be able to move or walk a distance?
Oh, yes, sir.
Like what?
One of the last cases I worked, the shooting victim went 125 feet before he collapsed. He was shot inside a home, collapsed on the street after traversing an outer porch, down a set of stairs, across a very large front yard, till he collapsed in the street.
Have you seen people that have been shot, and even after they've been shot, they'll be able to go a distance or move on their own?
Yes, sir.
How about blood? You see people, different levels of when people are shot and how much blood is there?
That depends on the projectile type, where the person was shot. Did it hit a major artery? Did it hit a bunch of muscle? Did it hit, bone and deflect somewhere? That really depends. And then
Okay, so he brings up a really good point that it's going to depend on where that bullet hit. As you hear, he says, an artery. I'm sure major organs would bleed a lot, ventricles would bleed a lot. I'm sure that fat and muscle probably don't bleed as much. Potentially nerves don't bleed as much. I'm sure that, there's probably not going to be as much blood if it hits bone. But it's just one of those cases where it's really interesting because nobody can actually tell you what it hit. So, since they can't tell you what it hit, how can they really determine how he died? They're trying to say that he had passed away due to the gunshot wounds, but maybe he didn't. Maybe there was some other reason. Maybe he had a heart attack and whoever was trying to murder him then shot him to make sure that the job was done. Maybe and it's not that I wish these things on him, but I'm trying to be realistic as to, is this the only explanation? They said he hadn't been feeling well, so maybe he did have a heart attack. Maybe he had a stroke. Maybe he passed out from being hypoglycemic. Maybe he was diabetic and something happened. There's a lot of reasons. Maybe he was having seizures, and maybe what was actually happening was some sort of seizure disorder, and maybe he was starting to have a seizure. Um, and I know that like seizures are obvious, but it's just one of an endless list of various different things that it could have been that led to him even falling into the fire in the first place. How do we know that the fire came after the gunshot? Why can't they both have happened kind of at the same time a little bit? Why couldn't he have had some sort of a medical crisis, fallen into the fire, and then whoever was after him shot him while he was in the fire? I mean, wouldn't the fire kind of, if he's still burning and had just started burning, couldn't that potentially have altered how the evidence would appear? Um, could that potentially mean that it would ultimately cover up how he died, or, make it seem like it was a murder? I don't know. And I don't know why anybody would want to make something seem like it was a murder and not an accident. Um, and like in the recent calls, Melody admits to knowing that her husband had canceled his life insurance policy and stuff like that. So, if she knows that he canceled his life insurance policy, does it really make sense that she's murdering him for money? Because that would be where she would get the most money from. And there's just, there's so many questions that really have gone unanswered that I would really love to see answers to. And if anybody out there in YouTube land sees this and has any of the answers, please feel free to hop in the chat and let me know, or jump on Facebook and let me know there.
What were they wearing? Is it wintertime? Are they wearing several layers, or are they wearing a pair of shorts and a t-shirt?
A different amount of blood, even though people have been shot. You seen that?
Yes, sir.
63, just a sifting again.
Yes, sir.
64,
Still sifting, looking for small.
65,
Same.
and then 66. What are we doing here?
We are at what we call the bottom. We have now hit Earth. So we have recovered all of the burned material, whatever that may be. And so we will scrape another layer just to ensure that we've not missed anything. So we try to go to Earth and then scrape a layer.
Honestly, in a case like this, I really have to commend the officers for taking that much care of the crime scene at the burn pile, to where they go down to a layer of dirt and then they take an additional layer. There's not a whole lot in this investigation that I would really commend them on, but that is definitely one tactic that I just wanted to hop on here and give a little bit of praise of. Um, sorry, me being sick is getting back to me again. Um, but I really feel like that showed excellent, investigative skills to think to go an extra layer deep. So I just want to give, the credit where credit is due in this case, and in all cases that I cover.
You see in the photographs that it's daylight and it's nighttime. How long were y'all out there?
I believe I watched the sun go down and come back up that particular day. 4 or 5 a.m. is when I finally left the first full cycle of work.
Painstaking process, slow and tedious.
Yes, sir.
67, what are we doing here?
We are running our metal detector. We want to make sure we don't leave anything.
Did you find any blood at the scene out on the burn pile?
No, sir.
Now, as I go through these, this is the blue tarp photographs. What are we doing here?
So we're just documenting stuff that we found within those quadrants.
Now we get into these. What are this Shaw 83? What are these photographs of?
These are photographs of the skeletal remains that were recovered.
at some point during the investigation, there was something found in a rib. Do you remember when that happened?
Yes, I believe it was well after midnight when I was made aware that something had been discovered lodged in the rib cage.
.138. Did you remember how it was described by people at the scene, what was found, how they refer to it as?
I don't remember how I don't remember if they said it looked like an eraser or I don't remember what exactly they came and told me. I do remember they said, hey, we found something. You have to come look at this now. I said, okay.
What happened from there when that was found?
So I walked back down to the pile where they're working. Dr. Gooding and her team are still working. Investigator Olenek, who was taking my picture, says, Sarge, here you go. And I went, that looks like a projectile. Everybody stop what you're doing right now. I had to explain to Dr. Gooding, ma'am, I need you to stop for a moment. Everybody stop. Went and got one of the detectives. I believe I went and got Lieutenant Clark, but I know I let Lieutenant Ballard and them know. Say, hey, we've got a projectile. We also had to stop and let the coroner know at this point because now we've just changed our dynamics of our investigation. And so we had to take a hard pause while the detectives figured out their next steps. And so I had to wait for them until we could get back to work on what we were doing.
You were investigating a death.
Correct.
But now you're investigating possibly a murder. Is that how it shifted?
Yes.
Didn't find any gun. So if it's a suicide, you respond to a suicide. What do you look for?
The same things I look for in a homicide. We'll try to look for defect. I'm looking for angle of entry, back spatter. A gun location doesn't necessarily mean anything to me because I've had suicide victims do weird things with guns. A note, sometimes I find them, sometimes I don't. But I know in a relatively short amount of time if I'm working with a suicide or if I'm working with something else. This case was unique because, yes, we had a projectile, but it was still in a set of burned remains. So the best thing to do was to stop and get everybody on the same sheet of music at this point.
Shaw 166. What do you remember finding this?
Yes,
Seeing this?
I remember seeing that.
Now, came back out at some point and we're working this scene, but there's a photograph taken of a tire mark in Shaw 174, and in relation to where everything is at, in Shaw 174, when you look at these tire marks, what is at the top of the picture?
That's the pond they have on their property in between the main house and their pastures and their barn out to the far right.
This is 177, and the pattern there has a unique pattern. We're going to look at this pattern on the tires in RTV later on. And then I believe there was a a dive done to look for the gun in the pond?
Yes, sir.
Were you there for that?
Yes, sir, I was.
After you worked the burn pile, you actually did some other things while you were at the scene. So, were you able to go home on, July 5th, Thursday, you probably worked into Friday morning, July 6th. Did you able to go get some sleep, or did you come back, or what did you do?
I think there was 2 or 3 hours where I was released and then came back
When you came
Friday, finished the pile. Cherokee Fire Search and Rescue was in the pond. We completely sifted the pile. We also did line searches of the area behind the pile while the detectives were inside the house doing their searches.
Let me look at someone. Let me jump. I'm going to come back to it. But it looks like you came also back on July 11th, and you were working with Ballard to process some of the scene, I believe, or was...
Yes, sir. Those days started to run together.
Okay.
But I was out there for everything that I have.
And we're going to get to the photographs here, but to July 6th, looked like you came out and there was a blood stain that you thought some interest on the front door on the floor.
Yes, while we were still working in the pile and I had the fire investigator was collecting some items, I was asked to go in and assist CSI Thrasher and CSI Eckerd with some stains that they had located. My command asked me to give it a second look and do some documentation and some field testing.
And then there was one stain, there was actually a window, and there's 4 things that you looked at, but looks like you field tested the stain positions number 1 and 3. Do you remember doing that?
Yes.
And then I guess they were tested for mammalian blood using an OBITS test?
Hexagon OBTIS test.
OBTIS,
yes,
okay. And did stain number 1, was that positive for blood, mammalian blood?
I believe that one was, yes.
And this test that you...
So, this is the part of day 2 that I told you guys for the last several lives that I absolutely love, because the most that they can classify it as at this point is mammalian blood. And they use that as if it is a definitive test to say, like, yes, because it is mammalian blood, it is definitely Gary Ferris. Now, I get it. You know, only people can have hands and stuff like that. And so I'm not disputing that there is a person on the burn pile. But as far as like the drops of blood in the house, mammalian blood means that it could be Gary, it could be Melody, it could be a dog, it could be a horse, it could be a cow, it could be a goat. Like, any number of those things can produce mammalian blood as long as it gives a live birth. And you don't have to hatch it from an egg. You have a mammal of some sort. And so I find it ridiculous that they classify this as being such an important discovery. Like, it doesn't narrow it down. Or, like, it does narrow it down, not doesn't, sorry. But if we're going with the fact that it is mammalian blood, hell, Shamu could have killed Gary Ferris. Like, it's just, seriously. And so, this is just one of my favorite parts of the testimony, just because they constantly go over, does this test for mammalian blood? And it just gets redundant, but it also just gets more and more ridiculous, because the more you listen to the prosecutor on this, he calls it mammalian blood as if it was definitively Gary Ferris based on that. And it gets comical after a while. And then the way that the defense just tears him apart based on what never got tested at the scene, and all the I don't knows that come out of that, like, this part, which should have been a win for the prosecution, just truly ended up becoming one of the other key points in this trial early on that I feel the prosecution really failed the Ferris family. So let's get on to the show. Go get your popcorn, people. It gets good.
Use what is it, and what is the OVTI test?
And so it's what we call a field presumptive test that we can do at a scene to see if a stain that we're looking at, one, is blood, and if it is blood, if it's mammalian blood. So we'll use these at a scene to eliminate certain stains and then prioritize collection of other stains.
And then you also, on the 6th, I believe, found a deer camera near the burn pile?
Yes, while we were doing our walks, I saw a trail cam sitting on a trail leading behind the pile to the left down a well-worn path, and it was walking a ranch fence.
What do you mean by that?
The post fence with the wire to keep cattle or horses separate. I call it a ranch fence.
And did you collect that and the SIM card and things like that from the camera?
Yes, I did.
I believe on July 11th, 2018, you came back again, and this is when you were helping, well, I guess this was at the sheriff's office. Y'all took some items back, and you helped Lieutenant Ballard process the shirt that was.
All right, this is another one of those parts in testimony that I apologize for pausing on, but, I notice little coincidences in some of the testimony. And I find it a big coincidence that the prosecution does not follow up any further about this trail cam. Now, it does get briefly mentioned very similarly in future testimony. But there's nothing really too definitive, at least so far, that I have heard about this trail cam that would make me believe that they really found anything of evidentiary value on this trail cam. And I could be wrong. But if that's the case, where they didn't find anything really of evidentiary value, I feel like the next question would be how, give me 1 minute. I believe somebody's yelling at my children. Right. It was not an adult. It was another child using very much adult language, screaming at my kids. And since it's another kid, they can fend for themselves on that one, or they can come tell me and I can go talk to mom. Um, I apologize. I totally and completely lost track after that small thing. But I just find it very weird that they didn't continue questioning on the trial cam, or on the trail cam, not trial cam, um, to see what actually came from that. And I don't remember seeing anything about the evidence for it as of now, but I could have missed it. Um, so yes, we're gonna go back to day 2.
We're looking at,
Yes.
I think a shirt was originally found in the house as we're looking at Shaw 178. Is this that maroon shirt that we're talking about?
It is.
And then I believe for the sleeve, at some point y'all took that and had it sent off to the GBI. Is that right?
I did not do any further processing after what I did in the lab. I know we did note some stains and let the detective know there was some stuff there that could be sent off.
Right.
I don't recall if it was ever sent off.
We've stipulated to the report, so items were sent to the GBI and tested.
Oh, yes, sir.
188. This is a picture on the thing on the front of the shirt. What did that look like to you?
To me, at first breath, it looked like a scorch mark.
Consistent with soot or something from fire?
To me, it just looked like a scorch mark. It was something that was important enough for me to document. So I wanted to make sure that my case detective knew, hey, this is here.
All right. And then there was a OBTI test done on the shirt for blood. And what is this? It looks like a pregnancy test, but tell us what this is.
So this is and this was done at the house. This is in our lab. So what you see is the testing vessel of the hexagon test. It uses a cotton swab and a liquid in the test kit. You will swab the suspected blood stain, collect that on that swab, and then you'll clip it off into the fluid. It's a phenolphthalein style solution. Give it a good shake, count, and then you'll break off an end. You'll pour it into the area marked S, it's that trough, and then you wait. And so the first line you'll see is the control. That tells you, hey, the test is working correctly. The second line, the T, that's your positive for mammalian blood.
So the control C and the T here. And then some shoes were taken from the house, 2 pair of Nike shoes. Is that right? And that's what we have here.
Correct.
And then the ones here, these blue Nike. And did y'all notice things on these?
I saw what appeared to be some suspected blood stains on the shoes that I wanted to test.
And is that what this OBTI test is here?
Yes, we did one at the scene, and then we did some more follow-up in the lab.
Now, the Shaw 211, when you came back, I believe the 7th, check my notes, the 6th, the next day, so July 6th. This is the front door here, so as we're standing here looking towards the kitchen table area, we're talking about this area on the floor here, is that right?
Yes.
Shaw 215, is this the spot we're talking about?
Yes.
That was 1, and that was tested positive for blood.
Okay. Now, I know a lot of people say that, she could have put him in a tarp and dragged him, or in a carpet and dragged him, potential sleeping bag, things like that. In those cases, and again, I'm not, I was never trained in forensics or anything at all. I'm just giving an opinion based on what I know in everyday life. Um, if she put him in a tarp or a carpet, what are the chances that a man who is 6'4" and anywhere between 280 and 300 pounds going to miss blood spots so that they don't get smeared at all? Now, there does look to be like very mild smearing potentially up in, I don't know if you can see my cursor or not, but there seems to be like a very small amount of smudging like right here. But, and again, I am just some random nobody. And it just makes me wonder, shouldn't there be more smudging? Because my ex was 6'6", and he was typically like 170, 180 most of the time. He wasn't very big, but I would still, like, he was a wide dude, even though he wasn't, like, he was tall and very skinny, but he was wide still. Um, and so to me, seeing the pictures of Gary that I have seen, like, I feel that he would have taken up a good majority of the middle part of that hallway. So how is she avoiding getting any blood anywhere as far as smearing or anything like that goes? Um, because I feel like instead of them being little drops, since she can't carry him, she would have to drag him. Um, and I don't know, have you ever used the like flatbed carts at like Sam's Club or IKEA? Um, add a whole bunch of stuff to one of those and see how much control you have. A really good example of when you're a lot smaller than something that you're trying to move. Um, I recently went to Sam's Club, or not Sam's Club, IKEA with my best friend and her husband. And it was the first time I was ever in an IKEA. Um, but that's a whole nother story for another time. But at the end of our trip, we went to go get the things that they were going to order. And I was in charge of the um, little flatbed cart thing. And I'm only 5 foot. Um, Now I'm a little on the slightly bigger side, more along average, as far as weight. So I'm not the exact skinniest, but I'm very petite. Even being a little bit overweight, I am pretty much a medium in women's, and I can still fit in a lot of juniors clothes. I'm like an extra large in junior, so I'm very small and I'm very petite. When my husband had a truck, my feet dangled and I could kick them back and forth while sitting in the driver's seat. Um, and so when I was moving this cart and we didn't even have everything that we needed on it yet. We only had the 2 dressers that they were buying, and the boxes that came with that. And we didn't even have the desk that they were buying yet. And that was definitely the bigger of the boxes. And as I was going around the corners, the cart weighed so much more than me that I couldn't keep it from causing me to slide with it, and I couldn't control going around the corners very well. And so the cart would kind of do like a real wide turn because I couldn't really control it, because no matter how much I tried to get traction on the uh the smooth floor, my feet would slide. And I had tennis shoes on. I actually had tennis shoes that looked very much like Melody Ferris's shoes. Um, they were a sport trainer. They were Skechers. They had a very similar like running bottom. Um, and so, I mean, they were a very similar style. And even I had trouble. To the point where my best friend's husband sat here and he kept asking me, he's like, "Do you want me to take the flatbed?" And I'm like, "No." I'm like, "This is fun." And then I rode on it past my best friend and like a little 3-year-old, and she had to catch me. But yeah, I mean, it makes me wonder about some of the logistics of all of this. If you are former law enforcement, or if you have any experience at all in any of this, please feel free to come on into the comment section, or even in my email, um and let me know what you think. And I apologize, my Streamlabs CloudBot is not working. And even though I've disabled Nightbot is still connected to the channel. And I don't know what's going on with Nightbot. So Nightbot's just kind of taken over my stream. I'm going to have to mess with it tonight after I get off. But yeah, that was just kind of my thinking, is I feel like there should be more sneering if she really did kill him. I kind of feel like these blood spots came after the body was moved, potentially, if this was um if this really was Melody Ferris. I don't believe that he was murdered in the house, because the spots are just too clean. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but it almost seems like it came off of somebody's shoe potentially, or if there was blood on somebody's hands, that it may have dripped off of their hands. It could have dripped off of clothing. There was just there's a large number of things that it could have been on, that it was falling off of after the commission of the crime and not before. Um, and so I think that they kind of have the place that he was murdered and part of the timeline very, very wrong. Um, and that could honestly be a thing that helps Melody Ferris. Um, so, I mean, let's see at the end of trial how it turns out, but that's just something that I kind of noticed.
Yes.
Again, going back, I believe the 11th, y'all bring evidence back to the sheriff's office, and we're going to be processing some evidence here. Where is this actually at in the sheriff's office?
So this is at our headquarters building in the old section of our jail at 498 Chatton Drive. We have the bottom section, which was our old staff dining, that we converted into our lab.
Again, the shirt. What do we have here?
And so I've put this shirt under an alternate light source. I'm just looking at it.
And this is 232 for the record, sorry.
I'm looking at it under UV light. Blood is the only liquid in the body that doesn't fluoresce under UV light. It's going to turn brown. All I'm using this for is to help locate and verify what I'm seeing in the natural light is a location that I need to pay attention with when I take pictures or do any field presumptive testing.
Then brought the shoes back too?
Yes.
And then you and Lieutenant Ballard processed I believe the RTV, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And swabs were taken from, looks like the RTV the L2 shifter, the shifter up here on the steering wheel, I believe, the swab was taken from there, GBI item 25B, and that was taken and sent off to the GBI. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And then also y'all tried to look at and process the Kubota, is that right?
Yes.
Now notice the tire marks on the Kubota tractor. Now this type of tractor, is it one of those kind of easy to drive? You press forward, it goes forward, press back, it goes backwards?
I don't know anything about the operation of the tractor, but I know this one is not one of the models I'm used to where you have to run the handle up on the top side and engage the brake. But as far as the movement, I'm not familiar with it.
But you see the pedals here on the right.
Yes, sir.
This is Shaw 264. What do we see here?
So we're looking at a chemoluminescence reaction with the application of Blue Star onto the hood of the tractor closest to the fuel filling station.
Looks like something in 264 is blue here as I point to it, and blue below it here. What is that? And there's some blue over here.
And that's an indication of blood.
Could it be something else?
There are instances of false positives with Blue Star. However, when we see those, we'll see those pop like fireworks and then fade away very quickly. Blue Star lasts longer in its chemoluminescence than the other chemoluminescence that we would use. And so not only is it glowing, but you can see where it's attached itself to any trails of blood as it runs. So we know this to not be a false positive. It's an indicator that there could potentially be blood there.
Is your reputation as a crime scene investigator is important to you?
It's very important to me.
If somebody, not that they would do this, but if someone is there and just says, take a fast picture of this or something like that, are you going to let anybody tell you how to process evidence?
Not on my case, no, sir.
No, you're not going to just, if it pops real fast, get a real quick picture, are you?
No, sir.
And we've got some photographs here going through the RTV. Now, as we get into, this is 268, we get into things here. We're going to try to do something. And if you would, Judge, with your permission, I'd like him to step down and actually show how we do these. But this is 268-1. This is 268. Can you see it very clearly? Looks like just darkness, doesn't it?
Yes, but I can see it because I'm attuned to it. But yes, it is a dark picture. When we shoot Blue Star, it has to be dark.
Now, this is 268.1, which is the same thing. If you don't mind, come down here and show the jury how you can use the shading to make it pop.
You want to drive the mouse?
Yeah, I'm going to let him drive, Judge.
Fine.
So this is 268.
So inside Windows 11, they basically have a free version of Lightroom, which is what I used at the sheriff's office. And so for pictures where we want to do some basic lighting adjustment, if we're shooting in an altered light, we can come over here to the adjustment side. In here we look at brightness, exposure, contrast, our highlights, our shadows, and we can move these slides all the way to the left, all the way to the right until we get whatever we want to be exposed. And so I'm sorry.
Yeah, the soft voice. Go ahead and speak about it.
Apologize. What we'll do is we'll move these sliders left and right until we get the desired exposure that we want, so helping to kind of clean up, if you will. We're not actually changing the photograph because we don't save it to the original image. It will always be a copied image. And so for these, when we started to, we were pulling out the brightness in our exposure, and then we'll take our contrast and we want to see how it goes. So we're going to run it all the way to the negative to get it to come up. Our highlights wasn't really doing anything, but our shadows. And so we would run that for those photographs to bring it up. And I know your screen, you can't really see it, but there is
I want to try to do something remote. My screen looks completely different.
yes, sir. It has to. It probably has to deal with the tie-in, but I assure you that there is a change on a computer screen where we can then save it as a copy. And so in this instance where you see parentheses and a number, that is a saved copy. And then we can further explore that inside our metadata and make sure that we haven't altered an image. But that's how we do that in the Windows program.
I think if you have a seat, I'll go through that, and I'm going to cancel it because I'm not going to save this one.
She's going to be coming back in the morning. If y'all want to test the settings on the monitor and see if y'all can adjust it and show that in the morning, that's fine.
Yes, sir.
So 268, and then before trial, you were able to get with one of our investigators and adjust it. Is that right?
That is correct.
So this is 268.1, which is the adjusted, and what do we see here?
The chemoluminescent reaction blue star on the towel that we located in the back of the RTV.
And what is that indication of what it could be, possibly be?
An indicator of possibility of blood.
269, what do we see here at the bottom?
Chemoluminescence reaction.
And 269.1 with the adjustment, same thing?
Same thing.
270, kind of right here. 270.1, is that adjusted?
Yes, sir.
So let's see if the so this is 270, and you just adjust the light. Is that what you would do?
Yes.
So as I go with brightness to the left, it gets dark. But if I zoom over, you actually can see it.
Yes, sir.
And then, so it takes a dark picture with blue star on you. You're better able to actually see it pop. Is that right?
We're able to see the chemoluminescence reaction.
And basically what I just did there is what you do with these photographs.
Yes, sir.
270, 270.1, same thing, adjusted, unadjusted, adjusted.
Correct.
271, 271.1, 272, 272.1, 73, 2. So off that towel, he has some illumination from Blue Star. Did you process the RTV, the tractor, the shoes, the shirt, the floor in the house. And we're going to probably talk about tomorrow, and we'll get in. But you also assisted with some other things in the case. Did you go back out when they were went back out? And I think about a year later, looked for some casings on the property or some. There was a shooting range or something like that on the property. Did you go back out and help with that?
Yes, sir.
Tell the jury what y'all were doing there. What were you trying to do?
We went back out a year later. We flew the drone footage. We did some decibel meter testing, and there was an area on the lower, I believe it was the right side. It was down a pretty steep embankment where they had an old tree that they were using for target practice, as folks do out in that part of the county. So I went out there looking for projectiles to see if I could locate a projectile that I could send to the crime lab to possibly match to the 2 projectiles that were located that night at the scene.
And did y'all collect casings, bullets, things like that, and bring it back, and some of that was sent to the GBI?
Yes, sir.
I think we're going to get into it tomorrow, but did you also come back out on July 18th, I believe was it that year or the next year? I think it was the same year. And with the marshal's office, actually do some sound testing.
That was July 18th of 2019.
2019. About a year later, I believe, and then y'all came back out and had some equipment to actually do a test fire and then measure the loudness of those gunshots. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to stop here, Judge. I'm not going to go into the test fire until tomorrow, probably. I'm just going to, can I tender it to them for their cross?
Cross on this portion. No.
I think it would be easier for me to do it all at once, if that's okay with the court.
Let's do something for.
Do something. I do it.
Yeah, try to split it up into what he's testified about now, and then we can cover this stuff tomorrow.
Okay.
All right, turn the lights. You need the photographs, or turn the lights back up.
Oh, please turn it back up.
You don't need to stretch. Do a 24/7 anytime workout.
Good afternoon. Is it, because I know you're with the campus police now, right?
Yes, sir.
Is it Sergeant still or
Officer.
just Officer Shaw?
Yes, sir.
Officer Shaw, my name is Michael Ray. I'm representing Ms. Ferris. Let's find this logical. Okay, let's start here. So, from what I gathered from Mr. Fogus, going over all of your experience, was you're state certified in crime scene investigation, right?
Yes, sir.
You also attended the National Forensic Academy.
Yes, sir.
And at this point, on July the 5th, 2018, you were the lead crime scene investigator at the Purcell Lane house.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, in terms of crime scene investigation, the buck stops with you. Right?
Yes, sir.
So, and then the person above you would have been Lieutenant Ballard.
Correct.
Right. So, the witnesses before you, if I've been yelling at them about things not being done, that's your fault. Fair to say?
Fair to say. Yes, sir.
Okay. Now,
Okay, so I really enjoy the defense's cross-examination of Officer Shaw because I feel that he did a very good job at showing where Officer Shaw was lacking in his ability to process a scene properly at that time. especially for somebody who was a lead investigator. There was a lot of things that he did not do that he should have done. And I feel that the defense did a very good job of reducing his credibility during this part of day 2.
So let's get into kind of what you did with the house, because I know you had told me that you were still out at the burn pile around midnight, and you found the bullet in the rib around that time, after midnight.
I believe it was after midnight. Yes, sir.
All right. Now we heard from was it Sergeant Westbrook? He's the one that actually noticed the bullet first.
Okay.
Yeah, not okay. Is that correct or not correct?
Well, if he noticed it first, then that's correct.
Okay, well, wouldn't he have notified you if he found it first? I guess here's my question. Who found the bullet in the rib?
I was notified by Investigator Olenek.
Investigator who?
Olenek. Who was
Olenek.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, so he told you, and then that's when you would have called Lieutenant Ballard, I'm assuming, or somebody.
Yes.
All right. And that would have been presumably into July the 5th.
Into the 6th, I believe. We were out there on the 5th.
Oh, yeah, you came on the 5th. It would have went to the 6th, yes. All right. Okay. And you left at some point because you came back on the 6th.
Yes.
How did, because this is your crime scene, right?
Mm-hmm.
How was the crime scene secured overnight? Because I'm assuming not everybody stayed out there all night long.
That is correct. So my crime scene vehicle stayed out there. The sheriff's office, we stationed deputies at the entry point onto the property with the crime scene log.
Okay, with the crime scene log on 24 hours a day?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, and that would have been done until y'all were done with the house. Now, granted, I know y'all have been out there several other times, including over a year later, right?
Correct.
So, but during that relevant portion of time, law enforcement was there the entire time?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, setting up the grid, and I'm sorry, because of the way your direct was, so just going to kind of jump around, okay? So if you don't understand what I'm asking, just let me know. So you called Gooding to come out just because that's what she does, right? She's an anthropologist.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So she comes out, and she's the one that sets up that grid, along with, you and whoever else.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So she would have done that. How long was it from the time you saw the body, made the determination, got the approval, that Dr. Gooding showed up?
Probably about 2.5 hours.
Okay. Is it during that period of time, because you testified earlier that the fire was so hot when you got there that you didn't feel comfortable working in it, right?
Correct.
All right. So did it cool off in that 2.5 hours to be a comfortable temperature for you to work in?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What temperature did you let the fire get down to before you started working in it?
I don't recall if we measured it when I went into it. I know it was comfortable enough that we all made a determination we were going to start working.
Okay. Oh, it was measured by Shane Gaines, right?
Yes, sir.
With Cherokee Fire Investigator?
Yes, sir.
Okay. When you were out at the scene or at the burn pile, you're looking at the remains. At any point, did you touch any of the remains? Did you disturb any of the remains?
I did not.
Did any of the other investigators, as far as you know, touch or disturb any of the remains?
From the time I arrived on the scene, no one touched the remains until Dr. Gooding arrived.
Okay. So if Dr. Gooding comes and testifies, and she was like, this is where we found this is where we found this is where we found this, then that is where it was, at least when you got there.
That is correct.
Okay. Have you heard anything about anybody moving anything around prior to you getting there?
I was not made aware of anything.
Okay. I'm just pulling that up for when I need it. You had talked about this citronella smell and that you kept smelling around the burn pile? Right?
Yes, sir.
Did anybody else, to your knowledge, ever say that?
I didn't hear anybody say it, no, sir. It was my observation.
Did you put it in your report?
I believe it's in my report.
Okay. You also you did note in your report that Shane Daniels had taken samples from the burn pile.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you know whether or not those were ever tested for any type of accelerant or anything?
I believe they were sent off. Yes, sir.
Okay. Did that come back that you're aware of? The results of that?
I believe no accelerants came back.
Okay. You also, or do you know that Ms. Ferris, they tested her hands for accelerants and that she was negative for accelerants? Did you know that?
If it was mentioned to me, then yes, but I know he did his fire investigator duties while at the scene.
Okay. So, best you know, there's no accelerants, right?
Correct.
Correct. All right. Now, I'll come back to that.
Okay, so I find it strange in a case where a body is burned, especially to the degree that Gary Ferris's was, where there was cremation. I feel that somebody somewhere had to have used some sort of an accelerant. Now, I haven't done any fire investigation or anything like that. I couldn't even begin to explain the process for fire, but let's do a quick little Google search and see if there's any accelerants that burn off and can't be tested in a fire. So, I apologize. I'm trying to see if there is any accelerants that can't be tested. Aha. Okay. So it says for an arson investigation that it's possible that some accelerants may not show up on an arson test if the evidence is destroyed or contaminated. I apologize that it took so long to find an actual answer. Arson investigations can be challenging for a number of reasons, including evidence destruction. Smoke or other factors can destroy evidence at the scene of a fire. Contamination. Firefighting operations can contaminate evidence. Sample collection. It can be difficult to collect suitable samples of debris for laboratory analysis. Container leaks. Leaks in containers used to package evidence can allow volatile substances to escape. The most common method for identifying accelerants is to use a gas chromatograph, or CG, or gas chromatography mass spectrometer, GCMS. The chemical signatures of the accelerant are then compared to the substances commonly used as accelerants, such as petrol, heating oils, or nail varnish remover. Some common accelerants include gasoline, paint thinners, and light kerosenes. So there is a way to not have an accelerant be identified. And it could be for various different reasons. But I find it interesting as to the various types of things that could have caused, the evidence to show up as not having used an accelerant. Now let's see if I can find an answer on, is it possible for Melody to not test positive for accelerants if she washed her hands? Okay, so there are some things that are not water soluble accelerants. Those ones cannot be washed off as easily because they are derived from crude oil. And that there would have to be lab cleaning measures taken. Now, I got that off of a marine fire site that was a PDF. But, so yeah, I guess it would be possible for her to wash her hands, and potentially remove an accelerant as long as it wasn't crude oil based. So it would be interesting to see if she would be able to just wash off citronella or something citronella related. I don't think that ever actually gets brought up, but it's a good question to ask, to be honest.
You stated that there was, you observed no blood at the burn pile, correct?
Correct.
And that would be, let me pull this, because this is a kind of a tricky picture. So this is actually a photograph. The house is to your back, right?
Yes, sir.
Right. And so going from the house down to the burn pile, it's somewhat sloped, right?
Correct.
So you didn't observe any blood going from the house down to the burn pile, right?
I do not know, sir.
Okay. And you didn't observe any blood anywhere around the burn pile, right?
Correct.
Okay. Number 150. Okay. So that is what you had originally referred to, or some of the investigators referred to as the eraser.
Yes, sir.
That looked like an eraser. All right. When that was taken, did Dr. Gooding or the coroner take that into evidence?
The coroner took the remains into evidence.
Okay, so Dr. Gooding got them from the pit, contained them somehow, and the coroner then took custody of it?
The remains were cataloged in white disaster bags so that the coroner could seal those and take those with her.
Okay. And as far as you know, this projectile was sent off to the crime lab as well?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Bear with me, this thing scrolls kind of fast. So going back to 174, Mr. Fogus had asked you about the tire pattern here, 174, 175, 176, 177. Any imprints or anything done on that? Or did you take any imprints of that, or did you just take photographs of it?
What do you mean by imprints, sir?
I don't know, like if you see Bigfoot walking around, like make a cast of it, so you can compare it to other things later.
No, I did not cast that at the scene.
Okay. Did you do anything else with it other than just take the photographs?
No, sir, because I've got a top-down 1 to 190-degree photograph of it.
Okay, so you didn't need to do anything else with it?
I did not feel at the time I needed to do anything else with it. Yes,
Okay. Just since it's the order of the photograph, so that'll just make it the least confusing. So this red shirt, I understand you did not find the red shirt, right?
Correct.
All right. Do you know where the red shirt was found?
I know it was in the house, sir.
Okay. You don't know where in the house?
No, sir.
Okay. Do you know where the blood, because this was 190, was your test of the blood, what location on the shirt did you use your test?
You'll go back to the picture with the OB ABFO square. That's where we tested.
This one?
No, sir. Go back one. Go back one. There. The big stain.
Okay. This stain?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I'm asking you because I don't know. Is that this stain? I'll flip between 186 and 187, okay? Is that the same stain? In the middle of the shirt?
I believe it would be the same stain. Yes, sir.
Okay. So if we go back to the whole shirt, we can get to it. So it's kind of right here, the right-hand side, almost directly below the logo. Fair enough?
On the left-hand side, yes, sir.
Okay. And that's what your testimony to this jury is, that tested positive as being blood.
They feel presumptive, yes.
Okay. Field presumptive for
Yes,
blood.
sir.
Okay.
For mammalian blood.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
And are you aware that this shirt was sent to the crime lab?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are you aware that the test came back for this shirt?
I know they did get test results back.
Okay. Do you have any indication of what those test results were?
I've been through several of them, so I don't recall right off the top of my head.
Okay, that's fine. We've got those people will come in later. So the next thing with these shoes, I believe then you tried to do a test on these shoes and it was negative.
One shoe did show negative and one did show positive.
Okay. And one of them was also sent to the crime lab as well, right?
Yes.
Okay. And on stage 209, at the top on the right-hand side of the shoe, that's the spot where you tested?
Yes, the biggest stain, yes, sir.
Okay. And not putting words in your mouth, but that was sent to the crime lab, right?
The shoes were, yes.
Yeah, but you're probably not been enlightened as to what the results were on that either, were you?
I do know the ones that we tested in the lab did not come back. They came back positive for blood, but not for Mr. Ferris. Came back with Mrs. Ferris's blood.
Okay.
Okay, so that is part of the evidence that I have been telling you guys about for days now. That is part of the testimony where it is definitive that if she used those shoes in the commission of this crime, that was then not Gary Ferris's blood on those shoes. It was her blood. But again, Nobody has testified that she had any open wounds at that time. So that means that that blood was there either before the crime or after the crime, and Melody may have hurt herself afterwards. But I'm going to assume that that's probably from some past injury. God only knows what past injury, but some past injury. Maybe, she like cut her hand in the kitchen and was bleeding and accidentally stepped in her blood or something. I mean, there's a million explanations for this. That to me does not seem like as big of a like she did it as they were hoping for. It really does a good job of showing that they really rushed to judgment on a lot of this. And it really makes me question, like, if you guys got no other evidence of blood other than on these shoes, why is it Melody Ferris's and not Gary's if she committed this crime? I want to hear what you guys think. I really, truly want to know. Am I just the only one that feels like this is a crucial piece to starting to dismantle the prosecution? And I keep saying it, and I know I sound like a broken record at this point, but I really feel like the prosecution coming out with this explosive of teardowns as they have had since the beginning of day one, I feel that they really rushed to judgment and that this is overall going to hurt their case, no matter how strong they come out in the end. But I very well could be wrong. We're halfway through the trial, so let's see.
But you don't know which shoe that refers to, right?
The ones in 209.
Right here? This one?
Yes, sir. Those are the ones that we tested in the lab.
Okay, so you tested that, the 209. We'll just call those the blue Nikes. So that had Ms. Ferris's blood on it.
I believe that's what the report said. I was made aware of that.
Okay, you didn't do the testing.
I did the field presumptive testing in our lab, but we sent it down to the crime lab.
Okay, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Did anybody tell you what the crime lab said about it?
That I believe it came back. It was not Mr. Ferris's blood.
Okay, exactly. Thank you. All right, now, this little spot. So I'm going to show you 213.
Also, one last quick thing that I did not think to bring up before, but why was there so many other pieces of evidence that they would not tell this detective of if he was the lead detective on the case, but they make it a point to tell him about Melody Ferris's shoes that come back with her own DNA and not Gary Ferris's. It seems really weird. I don't know if they have somebody who's going to explain it away or whatnot, but yeah, it's really interesting. I want to see how they explain how Melody's blood really came to be on those shoes. That's where I'm really most excited to learn new information going forward.
So this little entryway between the front door and going into the dining room, there is that little spot right there. Did you field test that spot specifically?
Yes, because it was a large volume.
Okay, so that is what you wrote in your report. That is stain 1.
Yes.
Okay, so that tested positive for blood.
Yes.
Okay. Did you then swab that and send it to the crime lab?
I don't recall if I swabbed it or not. I'm pretty sure I did. Now, whether it went to the crime lab, again, I don't know. I was never asked to complete that process and send it down.
We already established that this is your investigation, right? So who do you got to ask to sing the evidence to the crime lab?
So I conversate with the case detective.
So it'd be Detective Hayes.
Yes. I would not make assumptions on the directions of his case.
So you would leave it up to him to decide what evidence you test and don't test? While you're actually investigating the crime scene?
The crime scene itself was already investigated. This is follow-up forensics investigation. And so
No, this testing that you did right here, this spot, states 217, that's on July 5th or 6th.
That was tested at the scene, and it tested positive for blood.
And then what my question is, because your report says nothing about it, did you swab it, bag it, tag it, and send it off to the crime lab?
If it is not in my report, then I did not swap it, nor did I collect it.
Okay. So if it wasn't swabbed and sent to the crime lab, we have no idea whose blood that supposedly is, or even if it is actual human blood.
Correct.
Now, you also had talked about with Mr. Fogus, there was another stain. You called that stain 3, and it was negative, correct?
Yes, sir.
Then there was also what you had reported being stains 2 and 4, but they were too small for testing.
Correct.
Okay. All right. 232. Because I was just confused about this. So, states 232, the ultraviolet shirt. This is still the red shirt, just under ultraviolet light.
Yes, sir.
Let me see if there's that a better explanation. So 131 shows the shirt, the red shirt, and then that's it under ultraviolet light, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now you were talking with Mr. Fogus that blood is the only thing, and I'm maybe paraphrasing. Blood is the only thing that will glow brown under ultraviolet light. Is that what you meant?
No, it doesn't fluoresce. I've not found where blood fluoresces under ultraviolet light.
So blood doesn't fluoresce under ultraviolet light.
Correct.
Okay. So presumably, I'm assuming what you're implying is that it's your belief that some of these other spots were potentially blood.
They could potentially be, yes.
Okay. So I'm assuming when you put this light on this shirt, you would then pull out those handy little, what do you call them? OB TIS kits? The OB TIS?
The hexagon OBTIS kits.
Yeah, okay. So you'd have pulled out one of those and tested those spots, right?
No, sir.
Okay. You just did it on that one little spot where we had previously identified kind of in the middle of the shirt.
Correct.
Okay.
Now, I really feel that the defense does an excellent job of really digging into this witness and holding him accountable for the things that they failed to test. I do kind of wish that they would ask a little more questions as far as why didn't you test them. I feel that they lost an opportunity there, but especially considering he was the lead detective or the lead investigator. So I really feel like the defense missed a very good opportunity to have him expound as to why he chose not to test those. But I still feel like they're coming out significantly stronger than the prosecution, and they're doing a fairly good job of casting reasonable doubt as to the efficacy of their investigation.
So any of these other spots you didn't test, and you're not familiar with what, if anything, came back from the crime lab?
We did not test those for field presumptive positive or negative testing in our lab. It's a documentation, and then if it's sent off to the lab, we let the crime lab do their testing on it.
Okay. And but you don't know what the crime lab testing was?
Correct.
Okay. Now, let's go to the RTV. Now, a lot of the RTV stuff, this photograph, this is when you brought it over to the jail, right? Which you call it your lab, but your lab's at the jail?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is brought over to the lab. You actually did a lot of the Blue Star testing actually at the residence, right?
Lieutenant Stewart did get samples out there for us.
Okay. Well, I just thought Lieutenant Stewart just took the photographs that you were doing the actual Blue Star.
Not at the house. All my Blue Star was done here at the lab.
Okay. Do you know who did any Blue Star at the house? If anybody.
If anybody, it was the GBI.
Okay. Let me ask you this, just while, because I know you had to go up the chain of command to, I'm assuming, hire Dr. Gooding to come out here to remove the remains, right? Like you had to call Ballard, Ballard had to call Captain Pinion, and Captain Pinion had to give the okay, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And somebody, I'm not 100% sure, I don't know if it was you or was it Lieutenant Ballard, made the decision to call out the GBI, Lana Coffey. Who made that call?
Lieutenant Clark.
Lieutenant Clark. All right. What was Lieutenant Clark's role in this?
He was the person's unit lieutenant. So he would have been over.
You kind of got a deep voice, so a little louder.
I'm sorry, he was the person's unit commander.
The person's unit?
Crimes against person.
Oh, crimes. Okay, crimes against person. So he was that commander. So he made the call to call out Lana Coffey.
Well, but I had to start with him because it was done outside of my purview.
Okay, so he's over here, and him or somebody made that decision.
Yes, sir.
They didn't ask you.
Correct.
All right. Even though you're the lead crime scene guy.
Correct.
Correct. All right. How many crime scenes? I know you had said you'd worked in Gwinnett and stuff like that. How many of these investigations, larger investigations, have you done being at Cherokee?
Probably a dozen or so. Large-scale investigations to this magnitude.
Yeah, that's what I'm not talking about the little things. Have you seen the sheriff's office call out the GBI before?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Have you seen the sheriff's office call out the GBI to essentially conduct the investigation?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you know why the GBI was not called in to conduct this investigation?
Because we could do our own.
Okay. Who makes that decision? And if you don't know, you don't know. I understand if that's, above your pay grade, but to the best of your knowledge, who makes that decision?
To call the GBI?
Yeah.
Well, that would come from the command staff.
The command staff?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. So, jumping into the RTV. With that, I lost my spot. You had done some swabs on the RTV, right? Especially the L2 shifter. That was at least one swab that you had done. We actually don't have. There's no photographs of the R2 shifter, at least that are in evidence. So, Mr. Fogus had put up what is 266. All right, and I'm assuming here in the top left-hand corner on the gate of the Kubota, that's where you're saying is maybe blood.
Yes,
so
sir.
that's what Blue Star is telling you, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I'm assuming, yet again, immediately you see that, you got to swab it to send it off to the crime line, right?
No, sir.
Okay. Why?
Because those two particular little marks were not large enough stains to collect a sample. We saw the chemoluminescence over the entire, we sprayed the entire tailgate area.
Yeah.
Those were the only, actually there's a little third little dot right there.
Yeah, right here. Well, why not take you Q-tip, long Q-tip, rub it on there, and see if you can get a DNA and send it off?
because we did not at that time.
Okay, so essentially we may have blood, but we don't know, right?
Correct.
Now that would be the same, Mr. Fogus has shown you right here, a little bit of this. You didn't swab this, you didn't try to collect it, to send it off to see about that, right?
Correct.
Okay. Now what about, because there's no photographs and there's nothing in your report, what about the actual bed of the RTV? There's no indication there was any testing done in that, right? You didn't do any testing in that.
We did not.
Okay. You essentially just sprayed the Blue Star around the bed, correct?
Well, we have it. It goes into the bed as well.
Okay. You didn't see any blood in there.
We did not get any chemiluminescence reaction.
Okay. From the bed of the RTV, just so the record's clear.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, this tractor. Now, when you were doing this, because your report doesn't, at least your initial report that I have doesn't talk about getting super detailed. It's not a bad. I'm not saying you wrote a bad report. It's not a bad report. It's just not as detailed. So, like with this tractor, and so I mean, you're saying that this is a little bit of blood, or could be blood on the top of the tractor. When did y'all do this testing at the jail?
I believe this was done several days after we finished our work at the actual house.
Okay. So this is, y'all had to load up the tractor in the RTV, haul it over to the jail, and keep it there before, and then if you just tested it a couple days later.
Well, I think we also had to get search warrants to do our processing, I believe.
Okay. And then yet again with this wasn't swabbed and collected and sent to the crime lab for identification, correct?
Correct.
Judge, I've got probably about another maybe another 10 minutes or so. That's whatever you want to do. The towel that was collected. You just did the testing on this towel. You didn't locate the towel, correct?
Well, I mean, it was in the back of the RTV, but yes, we tested it.
Okay. And it's what your statement is that this is blood. Or is that it's presumptive for blood because of Blue Star? Okay. Now, did this go to the crime lab, this towel?
I don't know if it did or not.
Okay. Are you aware of any towels and hand or washcloths, I guess, that actually are towels and washcloths that did make it to the crime lab?
No, sir.
Okay. If the crime lab tested a towel that the state believed had blood on it, it's a fairly good assumption that's the towel, isn't it?
We'll go with fairly good assumption, yes, sir.
Okay. Now this changing things. So how come, like you got the states 268s just on the you can't see it on the TV screen, but I can on a computer monitor. I can see that it's the towel. Okay, so and then you change the settings and stuff so that you can actually see the Blue Star, right?
Yes, sir.
So all right. Now why do you have to do that on this, but you didn't have to do that on the tractor?
We had enough ambient light in the evidence bay. There's a single emergency light that must remain illuminated in our evidence bay.
Mm-hmm.
That provided enough light for the camera to capture the chemiluminescence. When we did the towels in the lab, we can turn off all our lights. And so we were trying to adjust our cameras out to pick up the reaction and see the outline of the towel.
I'm confused. I thought you needed total darkness to be able to see Blue Star. Okay. if I sprayed it right here on the table, and look, there's blood there. Would I see it light up?
Well, if there's blood on the table, we wouldn't need to use the Blue Star.
Okay, fine. There's blood on the table. I wiped it off. Now I spray the Blue Star on there.
It would need to be dark in here to see the chemoluminescence, and we would use the ambient light in order to adjust the camera out to take the picture.
Okay, so basically you have to get the light setting to a certain point to allow you to be able to see it. But it's not total darkness.
Correct.
Okay.
We're shooting on full manual functions on our camera.
Okay, so why don't you, for some of those towel photographs, instead of manipulating the contrast and the brightness of the photograph, just take it somewhere so you can actually take a proper photograph?
Because if you keep reapplying Blue Star, you'll lose the reaction. And so we have to try our best in our reaction time, because if you keep saturating the towel, you're not going to get a reaction at that point.
Well, wouldn't it be a smart idea to do the testing the first time in a place where you know you have the proper light?
We did in our lab.
I mean, obviously not if you got to sit there and change the settings on the photograph to be able to see it. And you don't need to do it on all of them.
Yeah, and what we did is acceptable.
I didn't ask you if it was acceptable.
Moving and
let's
changing
make it easy.
It did.
No, because it's not in a written. You have manipulated the photograph by taking out what it actually is so you can see something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. You didn't have to do that with the tractor because the tractor is in a proper spot to be able to see what you're trying to see, right? It has enough light to be able to see it.
Yes.
Okay, but you're testing the towel in a place that you're intentionally testing it there, and you can move it. I mean, it's a towel. You can pick it up, move it wherever you want to, and you can move it somewhere else so you would not have to manipulate the photograph. Correct.
No, I could see the reaction in my camera, and I could see it in my lab.
But we just can't see it in any of your non-manipulated photographs. Right? Like 268. Do you see any luminescence?
I do.
Okay. Judge, if we can, I'd like to stop there. I don't want to let him go just yet, so I may come back tomorrow on cross, if that's all right.
All right. All right, anything else?
That's just tomorrow.
All right, we'll break for now. Same instructions I gave you yesterday. Let's get here at there. I've been informed by the folks that are going to be monitoring your parking spaces wherever I was wrong. They were outside, right? But anyway, are out not. Apparently, y'all found them. They're not going to be there before 8:30 to man it. So y'all get here between 8:30 and 8:45. There'll be a parking space for you, so you don't have to get here earlier. And we'll be up and running at 9 o'clock. Remember, don't look up anything about the case, anyone about the case, any people, witnesses. Don't Google any terms that you have heard in the case so far. Don't Google anything, because you're going to find stuff about this case if you do, because it's gaining traction and you don't really want to know anything about it, or you can't know anything about it. Y'all can look all that up when we're done, and there'll be a million hits on it by then. All right, with that, anything else? All right, y'all can be excused.
All right, give me 1 second while I shut off the thing. Oh, actually, I want you guys to listen to this. If I remember correctly, this is the dude that I was telling you guys about with the issue with his superiors not wanting to let him be on jury duty. Like they were making him work. I believe that this is the guy. So hold on. We're going to switch back to that for just a second, and we're going to listen to that real quick.
Week, so I'm going to do the same day. So we may tell everybody to schedule all their things, and we may take an extended lunch break that day.
All right. Never mind. That is not. I think it's day 3 that gets addressed. Or I may have missed it on day 2 morning. I don't know. We'll have to find it, and then I'll have to let you guys listen to that because I think you guys would find that interesting. That somebody's superiors did not allow for them to not work while they were on jury duty, and they weren't supposed to work. Okay, so I was able to pull up the webpage of the story about the wrongfully convicted woman accused of bludgeoning her boyfriend, husband, I forget what he was, to death. So sadly, I had to pull it up in a different browser, so I can't show it on screen, but we will, I'll read it out aloud. And then it's already on my Facebook, so just go to Crafty True Crime. But it says justice served after mom wrongfully convicted of bludgeoning boyfriend to death. Sorry, it was her boyfriend. Kimberly Long came home one night and found the love of her life, Oswaldo Ozzy Condi, bludgeoned to death in their living room. Officials pinned the death on her, even though the evidence said otherwise. True Crime News discusses the trial, conviction, and the ultimate exoneration with Long and the people who helped her get out of prison. And it goes to a podcast that I think we will cover another day. We're not going to do it today. But just kind of get some clips and outline the case, or see what clips I can find about the Kimberly Long case. And I feel like that is another good one to cover because, again, I told you guys, I feel like it's important to also highlight the cases where people were wrongfully convicted. God, I'm so tired. Where people were wrongfully convicted and then exonerated. I feel like it is important to go through those cases as well. I hope everybody has a good rest of your night. I will schedule here shortly the live for tomorrow, and I look forward to starting day 3 with everybody. Thank you so much for your continued support. I appreciate you guys bearing with me through the tech inconveniences earlier today. Hopefully tomorrow will go better. And I hope that everybody has a good rest of their night. I look forward to seeing everybody tomorrow for day 3, part 1. And hopefully I will have caught up with the case so that I can give some of my opinions based on what has already happened. And I hope everybody has a good rest of your night. Thank you.